record button. There we go. I see your screen now.
Okay. All right. Again, welcome everyone. And for those who were here last week, I'm glad you're back. And for those who are just tuning in, I'm also glad you're here. Well, we're going to touch on workplace violence today, and also something on active duty, active shooter incident training. Now, for workplace violence and active shooter training, I have adapted, aside from my training from my other department experiences, I have adapted Homeland Security and FEMA's guide to workplace violence awareness. So we'll start with that. Other than that, workplace violence is often thought of usually as a physical attack that can happen anywhere you're at. It can happen, like I said before, in a factory setting, in an office setting, in a library setting. And the very latest violence we had was, I believe, after New Mexico, was Washington State in Tacoma area, where a student was killed. And that was the latest one. Sad to say, hopefully it doesn't happen again, but we never know. And workplace violence, it can include threats, and somebody intimidating you, disruptive behaviors, either in oral or written statements. Somebody can give you a gesture or expressions that can communicate a direct or indirect threat of physical harm. I just want you to help to recognize common warning signs of violent behavior. Maybe we can understand steps that we can take to prevent this violence or effectively respond if it does occur. We can make a difference, you can make a difference. And hopefully it ensures the personal safety and security of all our co-employees and patrons. There are different types of workplace violence, which I will touch on a little later. We will identify warning signs. We will list maybe some actions and steps that can be taken. These are not all foolproof. There is no 100%. And maybe identify ways to prevent workplace violence. You probably, in your setting in the library, you probably already have policies regarding this particular subject with employee, patrons, customers. But if you don't have it, it would be good to have one. All reports of incidents that involves workplace violence should be taken seriously and dealt with appropriately. As people who commit such acts should be removed from the premises, like in the library. I mean, people, you can just hear them getting loud, getting aggressive. Yes, it's time to move them out of the library, away from the premises, and even subject to disciplinary action. Let me cite some examples of disruptive behavior, either coming from anyone. We had bullying. This happens mostly on teenagers and sometimes some patrons, regular people. Harassment. It could be sexual harassment, or it could be just plain I don't like you harassment. You're not from here harassment. Threats. Somebody can tell you, I'll see you outside. Why do I have to pay for this fine? I'll see you outside. Or somebody you notice that's stalking you, and you don't know why. And it can also become personal. It could be an emotional abuse, which comes from domestic violence, like for a staff member coming into work and bringing in some problems. We have the physical assaults. It can be just touching you, that can be a physical assault if it's meant as a threatening way. And God forbid, a homicide. Let's look at the levels of this. Intimidation. They can be disrespectful, they can be discourteous, they just can ignore what you say, they can just do what they want to do and do what they want to say. And they can be uncooperative, verbally abusive. You do get a lot of that. We do get a lot of that in the library sometimes. Well, that doesn't go a lot and sometimes, but it does occur quite frequently. And it can go to, it could escalate. The argument between patrons, co-workers, or management. These things can escalate. It goes up to the level of escalation. Staff or patron refuses to obey our policies or procedures, breaks equipments, steal properties. Those are escalations. Verbalizes wishes to hurt coworkers or management. Again, stalks, harasses, shows undue focus on another person. And also directly threats a coworker in person, in writing, or by phone. Things happen that a person that is disgruntled or a staff that is disgruntled can view him or herself as a victim, victimized by management. I have an experience on this, but for priority's sake, I better not, because some of you may be working or have worked in the same library I have. It could further escalate. Suicidal threats, physical fights, or assaults of co-workers, which does happen. The damage of destruction of property or destruction of property, and concealment or use of a weapon, whether to use it to harm somebody or just for use of strength or extreme anger, a toxic environment, physically aggressive acts, throwing or striking objects. You recognize these things. This is further escalations, either from a patron or a staff member or from anyone. It is the responsibility of all of us to respect all persons in government property or private property, library property, and we should give respect. As employees, we refrain from behavior that could be perceived as threatening, harassing, intimidating, or dangerous to yourself or others. We normally cooperate and participate in efforts, which is recommended by our administrative people to resolve workplace concerns. If you have workplace training in violence in the workplace, do attend it. There are several courses that are being given by FEMA and Homeland Security if you want to follow up after this session that we're having today. We have responsibilities as employees for reporting acts or threats of violence to our immediate supervisor, of course. We should not I'm sorry. We should refrain from adding from the information that we do give out to our supervisors, or making unfounded complaints against others just so you can get even with another person. We should not tolerate any co-employees who make such false report. Our managers and directors also have responsibilities. We should have a crisis management plan. Maybe have a crisis management team. I don't know if you have that in your own library, but it could be appointed and trained at each facility under organizational control or admin control. The teams should be staffed by full-time security personnel if assigned to the facility. And also, we should ensure that employees in this organization have mandatory training on workplace violence. I don't know, we'll find out later. If you could tell, give me information if your libraries have workplace violence training at all. And also, one of the things that our directors and management should promote is an environment that strives to minimize the likelihood of violence at work. By doing so, they should demonstrate respect for all employees and holding them accountable for their behavior. They should refuse to tolerate harmful, threatening, intimidating, harassing, disruptive, or other inappropriate behavior in the workplace. This could be anything simple, a simple act that we think that is non-threatening but could be threatening to another person. We should encourage employees, they should encourage employees to seek appropriate assistance. Attending violence in the workplace training and ensuring that subordinate staff attends training as well. And they should also be encouraged to take advantage of other training opportunities.
Ben, it's Louise. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to check with you on your slides. Some kind of virus thing popped up, and
yes.
And you were still on the title page. I don't know if you intended to move forward or not.
Yes. Sorry about that.
No worries. And I'll just say, too, if Ben had mentioned if anybody at their library has workplace violence training or has done so, please feel free to share that in your questions box. And then when Ben takes a break, I'll let him know how many of you do. So, all right. Thanks, Ben. I'll mute my microphone again.
Sure, no problem. Actually, if you have any questions, in between, just say so right away. If you can give it to me. That way, while we're within that subject, if I can answer it, I'll answer it.
Yeah, we don't have any questions yet. So, just let everyone know. I'll let everyone know. Just when you have questions for Ben or comments, please feel free to type those into your questions box, and I'll share those with Ben. So, okay. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. And continuing to our management responsibilities, their responsibilities, part of that is observations. They should be alert for the warning signs of inappropriate or prohibited behavior. It can be anything. It can be little things, big things especially. Immediately report employee complaints and other questionable actions to the security staff and their supervisors. If somebody is trying to threaten somebody, even just by saying, Ben, when I was working there, Ben, I cannot handle this manager anymore. What can I do? Or Ben, if that happens, especially if they say that I'm going to have to do something with that supervisor of mine, I tell them right away that since they open up to me, I have to bring it up to administration. And that's what, in one particular subject I did, or incident I did, and I was taking care of. I don't know if you remember that. I mentioned that last week. For instances of imminent danger, 911. We should not be worried about calling 911. That is their job. They should also preserve the confidentiality of employee complaints. They should not share information. If we give them information, management should not share it with other employees. They should protect our incident reports or related information or the privacy of persons involved, just as in other sensitive and confidential personnel matters. There are different types of workplace violence. It comes from criminals. They don't have any connection with the workplace, but enter to commit robbery or another crime. This accounts for the vast majority of workplace homicides, actually. The motive is usually theft. Usually, the perpetrator is carrying a gun or other weapon, which increases the likelihood that the victim will be killed or seriously wounded. And on this type of violence, most frequently it affects the taxi drivers who are in risk of being murdered because of their late night work habits, late night retail or gas station clerks, others who are on duty at night, and those who work in isolated locations or dangerous neighborhoods, and those who carry or have access to cash. Now, we would think we're a library. I don't think it would happen to us, but yes, it could happen. It's a crime of opportunity. You're getting out of the library at night. That's why it's recommended you go out to the library together, with a buddy system or 2 or 3 at the same time. But it doesn't happen most of the time because our schedules vary. But this is when you can ask security for help. We have, most of the time, you have cameras in-house. You just call security and say, I am leaving. Can you please focus your camera in the parking lot? That is one effective way of making sure that you're right when you leave the premises, the library. Another violence, a type of violence, is by customers or patrons. These violence are directed at employees by customers. And clients, even patients, can be students, inmates, or any others for whom an organization provides service. It can really be very unpredictable. It can be triggered by an argument, anger at the quality of service, denial of service. I'm sure we're all aware of that. That sometimes our patrons are demanding, and they ask for stuff, and they ask for things that sometimes we cannot give, just because we can give it or because of our policies in the library. Just an example, violence by customers. I will share this video because it had happened a long time ago. It can happen to anybody. It had happened to myself, my family. My family owns a restaurant a while back. And customer came in, and for one reason or another, it was a drunk person, um, killed my father. So it is something that touches me personally on workplace violence. I don't mind sharing it. Some of you might think it shouldn't, might be too much information. No, it's not, because it's something that can happen to anyone, can happen anytime. Violence by employees. It is violence consisted of acts committed by our co-workers, present or former employee. It can be directed against co-workers, supervisors, or managers. It is very rare. The pressures, long hours, and working conditions of deployments may increase stress and interfere with an individual's ability to cope. And then there's violence by related parties. We have co-workers that have gone through, unfortunately, sometimes divorces, breakups, and these ex-relations, who doesn't work there, can be a threat. For example, an ex-abusive spouse or domestic partner. These can be ignored, but if you do, what I mean by this can be ignored is by the employee themselves, but if they do, it can escalate. The best thing to do is to approach security and tell them about my ex, or my son or daughter, or someone close to me or related to me has been harassing either for something or anything at all. And so security can handle that and make sure they're present when this person is around. If it does escalate more, then of course police have to be involved. We have warning signs. Regardless of the type of workplace violence, the chances for prevention always improve with increased awareness from warning signs, and of course our rapid response to potential problems. No, we cannot predict human behavior. We can go to work and be smiling and be greeted by people, customers, patrons that have a bad day, and then the day always goes down sometimes. There are really no specific profile of a potentially dangerous individual. Like what I said, and like what anybody would say, police always tells me that they're just having a nice time. And then, boom, something happened. Somebody's laying dead or hurt or in a hospital. Warning signs. We have to listen to warning signs. And there are levels of escalation too in warning signs. Not everyone exhibiting warning signs, by the way, is going to be violent. However, no warning sign should be completely ignored. Any one or combination of warning signs at any level can indicate a violent situation. And we're back to intimidation warning signs. They are discourteous, disrespectful, uncooperative, verbally abusive. In the level 1 warning signs, staff should respond by doing this: observe and document the behavior in question. Write it up, write it down. And if you have to submit it right away, do so. Give it to the supervisor to seek help in assessing and responding to the situation. Everything is different. Supervisor responses. Our supervisor or your supervisor should meet with the offending employee to discuss the concerns right away. Now, if the offending employee is the reporting employee's immediate supervisor, how are we going to do that? The employee should notify the next level of supervision. Go up one level. Your supervisor is the one offending you, go to the manager. If it's the manager, go to the director. Now, if it's really that bad, involve the police. Like what I said, it's always better to be protected than let yourself out in the open. Now, if it's not an employee, they should still provide the supervisor an incident report so that they can have the initial response ready or what to do with it. The level 2 of escalation is the escalation. The person involved escalates the situation. Argue with customers, argue with co-workers or management. Really refuses to obey or policies or procedure. Throws around equipment, steal property for revenge, verbalizes wishes to hurt co-workers or management. Stalk, harass, or show undue focus on another person. Make direct or indirect threats to co-workers or management. I know some of these are repetitive, but it is how it works. Now, if this shows up, what should an employee response be? You should secure yourself, secure the safety of yourself and others if necessary. Immediately contact the supervisor. Document the observed behavior in question. That way, if you are asked, you know exactly what happened. Supervisor should consult with officials, functional area experts like police in assessing and responding to the situation. Now, if you're a supervisor and you're meeting with an offending employee, recommendations are avoid an audience. It's number one. Always remain calm, speaking slowly, softly, and clearly. Ask the employee to sit only to see if he or she is able to follow directions. Ask questions about the complaint. Maybe something as simple as, what can you do to regain control of yourself? What can I do to help you regain control of yourself? What do you hope to gain with these violent threats? Why do you believe you need to be violent to achieve that goal? This just gives the employees or staff member the choices, that there are choices on how to react. Now, if it further escalates, this is usually in such cases that the person displays intense anger, resulting in suicidal threats, the physical fight or assaults a co-worker. Again, damages and destructs property. Again, weapon, concealment, or brandishing it. Display of extreme rage or physically aggressive acts. Throwing or striking objects, shaking fists. You can tell when somebody's very mad at you, or very, very aggressive. I'm sure you have seen them. Hopefully you don't. What are responses when these things happen? 911. 911. Sometimes you have to directly involve the police right away. And again, you have to secure your personal safety again. Leave the area. Remain calm. As you would notice, there's a lot of information that I'm giving you that may repeat itself. But that's how the process is supposed to work. You have to contact other people, by the way. You may be also in danger. Keep emergency numbers for employees up to date and accessible. And we have to cooperate with law enforcement personnel when they have responded to the situation. We have to be prepared to provide a description of the violence or threatening individuals, details of what was observed, and the exact location of the incident. Most of the time, law enforcement will ask for us employees or supervisors to give an incident report also to be included in their report or complaint. Is there any questions so far, Luis?
Hi, Ben. Yes, I had a question about the incident report that you mentioned.
Yes.
Do you have a suggestion on maybe a checklist of items that should be included in an incident report? And the suggestion was too that if anyone in the audience has a template that they might be willing to share, they could send it to me and I'll pass it out. But Ben, in the meantime, what do you think is important for an incident report?
Well, the regulars, the who, what, when, why, or how, should be included. One thing we have to observe, especially in incident reports, is I have mentioned it, I don't know if I mentioned it before, that incident reports can be or will be part of the legal process. So what you write down on an incident report will be in court. If it goes to court, it can be subpoenas. What I mean if it goes to court is if the incident goes to court because of your incident report, then you have to attend, you have to make sure that what you wrote down there is what exactly what happened. That's why you have to have everything there. Who are you complaining about? What happened? When did it happen? Where did it happen? How did it happen? And of course, what transpired. Those are the general things that you want to put in an incident report. Now, you also want to have a witness, co-employee witness, signing it, or making another incident report to back up your report. That's normally what I have done, or what we have done, is when something happened, I write down an incident report. I ask a co-employee who had witnessed it to sign off on it. If there is no witness, then you leave it blank. You don't want anybody signing it for the sake of somebody signing it. That's generally what you should put in the incident report. Of course, if you know the name, address, phone number of the person you're complaining about.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Ben. That's all the questions I have right now.
Okay. Now let's go to extreme misconduct, such as acts of violence, on this segment, our supervisors should intervene quickly to investigate and, of course, take appropriate disciplinary or adverse action with assistance from, if we have a crisis management team, and the police if necessary. When standards of conduct are violated, when the employee's job performance or job performance of others are affected, when somebody gets hurt. Those are the extreme misconduct that should be really adhered to by the supervisors when an extreme misconduct occurs. When an employee exhibits signs of violence and the situation is not life-threatening, diffuse the anger. You can diffuse the anger by using the following techniques. Always, always remember this. I have reiterated it so many times. Meet with the employee or a patron in private to discuss the inappropriate behavior. You can build trust by listening and treating the employee with respect. You don't call somebody in room and start berating them. You listen. If you want to let them vent first. Do not argue, get defensive, or be sarcastic. You shouldn't take all threats or acts of violence seriously. Counsel the employee about the misconduct and how it affects the work of other employees, with a specific warning on future disciplinary action if her or his behavior continues. Now, if you tried this intervention and it still didn't work, and you're not able or unable to diffuse the situation and the threat of violence persists, of course, you should remain calm. Do not put yourself or any staff member in a position that you can be hurt. If you are meeting alone with the employee because you want to meet them in private, ask the employee to remain and excuse yourself from the meeting. Call the appropriate officials. Could be police. Now, after the situation has calmed down, counsel the employee in writing on the effect of violent behavior and initiate appropriate disciplinary action based on the misconduct or disruption. I know everyone has a level of disciplinary action, but depending on a supervisor, depending on the kind of disruption and misconduct, it could be somebody who threatened your life. I don't think you will want to start on the very bottom of the disciplinary action procedure. Now, if violence occurs, sometimes, despite everyone's best efforts to diffuse a situation, actual violence really occurs. Again, if this happens, to reiterate again, remain calm. Do not put yourself or any staff member in a position to be injured. Disciplinary action for extreme misconduct. In cases such as extreme misconduct, the supervisor, security, or police should meet with the employee, advise him or her that the conduct is unacceptable and access to the building has been restricted until further notice. If it's something that can be handled there and then, then this is the proper action to do. That way people, yourself, the complainant, can cool down. The employee should be escorted from the building by security, of course. Keys and ID are confiscated. You could place the employee on administrative leave. I guess these are paid non-duty status. I don't think it would happen, but you can do that if you haven't come to a decision yet on what to do with the employee, until it is decided what, if any, action will be taken against the employee. Now, disciplinary action for lesser forms of misconduct. One is first offense. This is what I'm talking about the process. May result only in counseling between the supervisor and employee, as well as a verbal or written warning. In the case of a second lesser form offense, a letter of reprimand may be placed in the employee's official personnel folder. A third offense may result in a proposed suspension or proposed removal as determined appropriately. Of course, written warnings, reprimands, proportional notices, and decisions notices must be coordinated with your human resources. There are prevention to workplace violence. We'll touch on that. And there is the best prevention strategies to maintain an environment that minimizes negative feelings, such as isolation, resentment, and hostility among employees. Isolation. You put somebody in a work assignment that you know is not suitable for long-term assignment. Resentment starts after this, and hostility among other employees because of jealousy. Why did he or she had that assignment and I got a bad one? No workplace actually can be perceived as perfect by every employee. Although management can help create a professional, caring work environment. Some other tips, some other steps that management can take: promote sincere, open, and timely communication among managers, employees, union representatives, although we don't have unions in the library, so we have one. There's only one library and all. Being open with your employees is always a good matter of business sense. Of course, when it comes to financial stuff, that's something that staff sometimes don't need to know. But just being open in all aspects of maintaining the policies that need to be done in the library, especially changes, then it would really help morale. Should offer opportunities for professional development. And they could also foster a family-friendly work environment. You know, this comes in with an off-site picnic or programs that includes family members. So just two examples. And they should also maintain some kind of mechanism for complaints and concerns. Allow them to be expressed in non-judgment forum That includes the feedback to the initiator. Quality of life. They should promote issues such as pleasant facilities and job satisfaction. A little attaboy, pat in the back. That's good. Even if something that's an ordinary thing, a person always wants to be seen as doing their job. A regular or little pat in the back goes a long ways. You're doing a good job goes a long way. Maintain impartial and consistent discipline for employees who exhibit improper conduct and poor performance. We have toxic employees. Let's admit that. There will always be a toxic employee or some toxic employees that always promotes gossip. Those are the kinds that we don't need in any kind of environment. And this should be addressed and disciplined. Now let's go to workplace violence security. We use photo identification badges, which we use now. Everybody has that. On site, if you do have the budget for it, you have on-site guard services. You have on-site law enforcement support to respond to requests for assistance. In the case of where I came from at Warren, they're running distance from the police department. There are other appropriate security measures, such as metal detectors, which you really don't want. You cannot do this. It really does become an unfriendly environment when you have metal detectors. And that is only my opinion. I have been asked that at my past workplace, but even my director doesn't want to talk about metal detectors. And simply because the friendliness of the library goes away. I mean, even checking bags, I really haven't seen anybody check bags. We really don't check bags unless it's very, very necessary, and we do it in a very, very private place. We normally call them in, and we have to check it because we saw something in the camera or somebody has said something, and we just want to make sure that it's not what it is. Education is also part of the prevention of workplace violence, such as training, this kind of training. Other educational offerings, continuous education offerings, topics can include communications, conflict resolution, anger management. Those are the three that can be used, or such as topic, the stress reduction. Other prevention is observation. Look out for warning signs. It can be present in perpetrators of violence. There's always a warning sign. These indicators may occur in isolation. It is more likely a pattern will appear or that they will represent a change from normal behavior. Although it doesn't mean a violent act will occur. It's only an indicator of another type of problem. It could be being ill, depressed, or bereaved.
I think just this room's lighting has to remain on while it's occupied. Thank you.
Now, for observations, we have the performance indicators. We have the attendance problems, decreased productivity, inconsistent work patterns, concentration problems, adverse effects on supervisors' time. Other observations, behavioral indicators, continual excuses and blaming, inability to accept responsibility for even the most little error, safety issues, disregard for personal equipment, machinery, safety rules, taking needless risks, unshakable depression, always exhibited by low energy, little enthusiasm or despair. They have evidence of serious stress in the employee's personal life, such as crying, excessive personal phone calls, recent change in family relationship status, unusual or changed behavior, inappropriate comments, threats, throwing things. All these things can be prevented. We should have our support services. And I am not sure, but I don't know if all libraries have their employee assistance program. This is a very good program. It is anonymous. So you should avail of these services if you really need it. Now, with that, on workplace violence, it segs us into an active incident. It is something that, again, happens, and something that isn't planned. Active shooters. Remember the term going postal? August 20, 1986 is when it first happened. 14 people were killed, 6 injured by a postal employee before killing himself. I remember that simply because going postal became actually the first poster boy of the active shooter phenomenon. It is unthinkable losing a loved one to a random act of violence. Unfortunately, recent events serves to remind us that we are not immune from these types of tragedies. Now, when I do active shooter training, I normally like to do it in person because there's more impact when we do the drill. I will try to impart as much as I could in this webinar, and if you would like to in the future, you can get in touch with me, benmunji.wordpress.com, if you want to have an active shooter drill done in your library. Okay, an active shooter is an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in confined and populated areas. In most cases, there is no pattern or method to their selection of victims. Most often than not, the shooter situations are unpredictable. It evolves quickly. Most incidents are over within minutes. We must be prepared to deal with the situation until law enforcement personnel arrive. And preparedness and awareness are the keys to helping protect our employees, our customers, and ourselves. I'd like to give you a little bit of scenario of what could happen in the library. With no preemptive reason at all, or no, I mean, but randomly. A man walks into the library, walks directly at circulation, check out this. produce a letter that says he owes $150 on DVDs not returned. Becomes very belligerent, making excuses, saying he's been unemployed, could hardly pay his bills and such. Clerk explains the reason for the fines, and it seemed like it satisfied him and he left. But the unpredictability happened. Came back, walked directly to the clerks, pulled out a gun and started firing. So these things can happen. It had happened. How can we prevent it? Unfortunately, we cannot. We can be prepared for it. When it comes and arises, we can minimize it. We can minimize whatever damage it can do. Active shooter incidents are becoming more frequent. We can all help and prevent and prepare for potential active shooter situations. It is an active shooter is an individual killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. No pattern in the selection of victims. Common motives, anger, revenge, ideology, and untreated mental illness. We cannot really predict when it would happen. What are our chances of surviving? It's, according to police, it's still 50-50 when that occurs. How can we respond? We have three things. We run, hide, and we fight. If you are ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, actually your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. Even a simple evacuation plan, a simple fire alarm plan, evacuation, tornado evacuation. If you have an evacuation plan, you're halfway there already, because you will be able to utilize this plan as your backup when something happens. It's good to have it, not because of just for the fire, not because of the tornado, but because of active incidents such as this. It doesn't have, the plan doesn't have to be complicated. The three things that you could do that could make a difference: the run, hide, and fight. We will touch on that subject. First and foremost, though, if you can get out, do so. Always try to escape or evacuate. Even when others, your employees, are insisting on staying. But do encourage people to live with you. Don't let them slow you down with indecision. You have to look for number one, and that is you. If you help yourself, you can be able to help others if you remain calm. And remember what's important to you. It's not your bag, it's not your laptop. Leave all your belongings behind. As I said, trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your number one priority. And once you are out of line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. Of course, if you can call 911 at the same time or before, that would be much preferable. Now, running. If there is an escape path, attempt to evacuate. As again, evacuate whether others agree to or not. Leave your belongings behind. Help others escape if possible. That's a big if possible. Remember, you take care of yourself first. As That's not being greedy or selfish. You have to take care of yourself first. Prevent others from entering the area. And then you call 911. Now, if you can get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Now, where am I going to hide? Break room? A staff room? Cafeteria? Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Then turn out the lights when you're in the room. By the way, if you're in the room, turn out the lights. Lock the door. Silence your ringer, which I didn't do earlier, so my phone rang. And vibration, and put it on vibrate mode if possible. If you cannot find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may be just the shelving area. It's a lot of shelves. We can utilize this. Other things you can do when you're in the room, when you're hiding. Blockade the door and remain very quiet. Let's go back in the hide portion. Locking and blocking the door. Silence your cell phone. Hide behind large objects. Remain very quiet. If at all possible, your hiding place should be out of the shooter's view. Provide protection from shots that are fired in your direction. Another important thing, do not hide yourself wherein your place becomes a trap or restricts your options for movement. That makes you a sitting duck. Now, the other things they say from Homeland Security is you can fight only as a last resort if your life is at risk. Whether you're alone, working together as a group, you can fight, but you act with aggression and improve your chances. Look for weapons. Try to disarm him. If there's 2 or 3 of you, and if you say we're only women, no. You can still do harm. But remember, this is a last resort, and you have to commit to taking the shooter down no matter what. That means if you decide to fight, 1 or 2 of you, if there's a group of you, might get hurt. Remember, it is a last resort, only if your life is in danger. What you have to do, you have to attempt to incapacitate the shooter. Act with physical aggression. And again, improvise weapons. It could be a stapler that could blind him. It could be a staple remover that could also pinch him. Pull the hair, pull it back. Use whatever weapons you have. Act with physical aggression. Be mad, because if you're not, think of it as this person is gonna try to take me away from my family. I don't want that to happen. You have to act with aggression. You have to commit to your actions. Remember, in incidents like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. We will review all these things again. I just don't want to go and do it just one time. Now, we will review the run, hide, and fight. You run if there is an accessible escape path. Attempt to evacuate the premises. Be sure to warn individuals not to enter an area where the active shooter may be. Have an escape route and plan in mind. Evacuate regardless of whether others agree to follow. Leave your belongings behind. Help others escape. That's only if it's possible. As I said before, prevent individuals from returning or entering into the area where you just came from. By the way, keep your hands visible when the police arrive. Follow instructions of any police officers. Do not attempt to move wounded people. Now, if you cannot do this, you hide. Let's review the hiding. If safe evacuation is not possible, find a place to hide where the active shooter is less likely to find you. Your hiding place should be out of the active shooter's view. Again, it should provide protection if shots are fired in your direction. Again, it should not trap you or restrict your options for movement. And to prevent an active shooter from entering a hiding place, lock the door. Again, blockade the door with heavy furniture. Close, cover, and move away from windows. Remain quiet. Be calm. Silence your cell phones and pager. Even vibration setting can give away a hiding position. According to police, active shooters knock on doors. They'll try the door. They'll try to enter. Try to see if somebody is in there. If there's any sound in there, they will go in. Now, again, we go to the fight mode as an absolute last resort. You will act as aggressively as possible against him or her. You will throw items and use improvised weapon. Work together to incapacitate the shooter. Commit to your actions. Reactions of managers or uniformed personnel during an emergency. Should be able to remain calm, take immediate action, lock and barricade doors, evacuate the employees and customers via a viable pre-planned evacuation route to a safe area. Now, again, a fire evacuation route, that plan would work perfectly to help in your active shooter incident. When you have pre-selected shelter-in-place locations, consider any safe areas within the facility that could provide good cover. Concealment options. You always use whatever is necessary. Desk tables, file cabinets, books, book trays, behind solid objects, and away from the door. Now, when you're on the phone and running and hiding are not possible, and you got a hold of a 911 operator, this is what you should give out: the location of the active shooter, the number of shooters, if more than one, physical description of the shooter, if you are able to remember, number and type of weapons held by the shooter, and the number of potential victims at the location at that particular time. These are important information that should be given to the police dispatcher. And most of the time, they will not hang up on you. They will stay on the line, but they will be quiet. And you only report when you could in case you are in a hiding place. Now let's go to the part when law enforcement arrives. You don't want to get hurt. So when law enforcement arrives, you want to do these following things. Remain calm and follow instructions. Slowly put down any items in your hands. By the way, before that, if you're in the room, they will knock on your door. They will identify themselves as police officers. You can tell the difference if they are police or not. Most of the shooters that I have, or the police that have told me that some shooters, they will knock on the door or try to open the door, but would not say anything. Now the police, when they knock on the door, they will ask if somebody's in there after identifying themselves as police officers. You can ask them questions. If they say they're police, tell them what department, or ask them what department are you from, or anything that could make you feel much better before you open that door. Once you open that door, that's when you remain calm and follow instructions. Slowly put down any items in your hands, bags, jackets, you don't need that. Put it down. Raise hands and spread your fingers. Spread them fingers. Keep them hands visible at all times. Avoid quick movements toward officers. Don't even hold on to them for safety. They don't know what you're going to do. They are there, and in their mind, there is a shooter. They don't know who the shooters are at this time, if they haven't caught them yet, or even if they did, they don't know all the information. You have to be very careful. Sudden movements will hurt you. Do not point, scream, or yell at anybody. Do not stop to ask the officers for help or direction when evacuating, because they are focused on finding and incapacitating the shooter. You should listen to the officers. Normally, from all the reactions that we saw on active shooter films, most of the people that they get out of the building are always in line with their hands up. They have police officers that guide you to where you are going. Now, once you're in a safe place, then you can start taking muster of all your employees. You know, your director or manager will take charge, see who's in the evacuation area, who made it out, who is left in there. Now, if there's somebody left in the building, that doesn't mean that the person has been hurt. It could be that the person is still in hiding. Again, when law enforcement arrives, remain calm and follow instructions. Put down any items and immediately raise your hands while spreading your fingers. Avoid making any sudden movements. Keep your hands visible all times. Any questions so far? Louise?
Hi, Ben. We do have a couple questions. They're not, let me see. One person asked about an online video that their local police department showed to staff on the run, hide, fight. Are you aware of that?
There are films out there, yes. There are several films out there. Homeland Security has films. FEMA has films. And that's why I said in the beginning, if they want to continue in this training, consult those films. And you will get the same kind of information that I have imparted, but at the same token, you will have them in film. you will have people doing the drills on film. So,
Okay. I do have a couple other questions, but they're not about active incidents, so I'll wait until you're finished and we'll go back to those.
okay. Now, we don't really have much anymore. I'm just going to give out what the law enforcement's role are when they arrive. And law enforcement's immediate response is to stop the active shooter as soon as possible. Officers will proceed directly to the area in which the last shots were heard. Now remember, if you're one of the injured, don't expect the police officer to stop and help you. They are not there to help you right away. They are there. Their priority is life safety, so they will need to secure the scene first. When there is an emergency, such as an active shooter incident, it is important to remember that officers arriving on scene may be coming from many different duty assignments and will likely be in various types of uniforms and even in street clothes. Do not be surprised by the variances in appearance, as law enforcement officials are trained to react quickly and work together. That's why it's very important to listen to what the police officers are saying. Normally, they will have some kind of uniform. If not, they will have badges showing, IDs and badges. So even if they come in civilian clothes, you will see a big prominent badge or something that says police on their T-shirt or their shirts or their bulletproof vest, if that's all what they have. Most of it, sometimes they come in just jeans and a bulletproof vest and a shirt that says police. Again, I cannot reiterate it much better than just how to react. Again, remain calm, put down any items in your hands, immediately raise hands and spread fingers. Keep hands visible at all times. Avoid making quick movements toward officers. Avoid physical contact. Avoid pointing. Do not scream or yell. Do not stop any officers for help. That's what I have for you today. And as I said, if you have and are willing to do more training, please do so. Homeland Security on their side have added active shooter training that is certifiable, which means that if you go through this course, you will be certified as a continuing education course. And so is FEMA. FEMA has a lot more for some reason than Homeland Security does. So if it was up to me, my opinion is I would go to FEMA to sign up for any courses that I wanted to take. And that goes for workplace violence also. Luis?
Hi, Ben. Thank you for that, for your presentation today. We do have a couple other questions that I'll share as we finish up here. As you know, I mean, Rails, our organization supports libraries of many different sizes and locations and types of libraries. So this question is coming from one of our smaller libraries. What do you, and they're asking about what do you do or how do you handle escorting people out of the building if you don't have library security?
Oh, how small is this place? If I can have an idea. 3, 4, 5 people? 6 people?
Offhand, I don't know, but if the person wants to follow up, I can. But I know it's in a more rural area.
Okay, I'm sure they're probably not working alone.
She said there's... Okay, she did follow up. She said there's at least 2 people in the building per shift.
Okay, 2
so
people
it's very
in the
small.
building. Yeah. And they do they go out at the same time or just one person goes home, one person stays? It depends, because if both of them goes out or goes home or signs out together, they can go out as a buddy system. Now, if only one of them goes out, clocks out, and the other one remains, the best thing he or she can do is to make sure that she calls in to the person when she is in the car or he's in the car to make sure that she made it in the car.
Okay.
That is if you don't have any cameras and nobody can take it to the car. You have to check in.
Okay. I think, though, the question, Ben, is about what if you have a patron that you need to escort out of the building and you don't have library security? And in this particular situation, they only have 2 staff people in the whole building.
Police, that's a police matter.
Mm-hmm.
How far are, and depending on how far they are, like what I said before, if it's not an immediate threat, you call the police on their non-emergency line and say you have people that are, not wanted in the library and they want to have to be escorted out. And in the meantime, while you're doing that, you don't want to let the people know that you called the police. So in their mind, in their eyes, their perception, it's all hunky-dory, and they will leave you alone until the police arrives, and then they can be escorted out. If it's an emergency, now that's different. Call 911, exit the building. Both of you exit the building. Leave the people or leave the person there. Now you cannot evacuate the building or the place if the person is in there. Now, both of you as an employee, you have a duty to protect yourself. You go out first. That is in very extreme situation. You go out first and tell the officer that arrives, the other person is in there. Maybe he's got a weapon, and the number of patrons that are left in the building, and that's how you can respond and help law enforcement.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. I have just one comment, and we do have, I see another question here too. So I'll just mention we've got about 5 more minutes before the webinar, so if anyone has any last minute questions, please go ahead and type those in so we can get to them. Here's a question. So how do you deal with a problem when a library board member, a trustee of the library, needs to be escorted out? At this particular library, a board member threatened the director during library hours. What do you suggest in that situation?
I almost wanted to say, I think I know who asked the question, but
yeah, no, let's leave names and libraries out of it. But
I know that's why I wanted. But if that occurs, security will do the job. Will escort
and what if they don't have a security department at their library?
Police will. Like what I said, if it's non-emergency, you can call non-emergency line and say that there is an incident and you have to take care of the problem next day. If you have to take care of it the next day and you just don't want the person in there to calm things down or to cool things down. Now, if the director wants, it can happen, it does happen, it had happened. Board members can be that way sometimes. When you talk to the board members, most of the time they will listen to security, but you said there is no security. If there is no security, even one of the staff member that knows the board member might put some sense into them and escort them out. Because it's a known fact. I mean, board members are close to some staff members. What I mean by close, you know them personally. So if there's somebody that knows this person personally, if you don't want to call the police, they can talk them out of, they can talk them into leaving the building. Mm-hmm. It's always somebody who knows somebody that can mediate, be an intermediary to get the person out of the building. But if not, then escort out by the police.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then just a comment, at this particular library, they like to issue, this is for when they have contractors or people working in public areas of the library, they like to issue visitor passes to those people who are working on site so that they're, they've checked in and we know that they're, contractors or they're
Yes, they
supposed to
sign
be
in.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I don't know if you have any comments or
yeah. They
something
do.
to add to that.
Yes, that is a good procedure. You have a notebook in the front. If you have security personnel or none, normally whoever is in the front when you come in into the door, let's say you go on the library entrance and the main people you see right away is a checkout desk, which is normal in all the libraries. If there's no security, you can put the notebook there next to one of the clerks for people to sign in as guests or contractors, and then they are given a badge right there and then. They sign in their name, the time, name of the company, given a badge. And if they needed an escort, normally you call the person who they're supposed to talk with or be with, and then they are met in the foyer. Now, once they check out, they have to re-sign out and give back the badge.
All right. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions we have for today, and it's almost 3 o'clock anyway. So thank you again, Ben, for presenting last week and again today. I think it was really helpful for everybody.
Oh, thank you. And by the way, a follow up on the library response guide, I will send it to you. And again, if anybody wants a copy of that to make it a guide for your security policies, you can get in touch with Louise. I will mail it to her within this, today, by this week.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Ben. And
thank you.
thank you for allowing us to record today. I did record it. I will post it on the Rails website within a couple days, and I'll email everyone when it's ready to view. And I know some of you are aware that the Illinois State Library has made library safety training a requirement for the per capita grant this year. And so this series would definitely fulfill that requirement if you would like to share the recordings with your staff. So with that, I'm going to end the webinar. Thank you again, Ben. Thank you all for being here today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.